Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the On Becoming Legend podcast, where every week it's my job to help you live a legendary life in whatever way you define it. Each week, I bring you new content from my own life and the lives of others so you can learn from our mistakes and avoid making them in your own life. This week, I'm talking to the legendary Jordan Mederich. Jordan Mederich is a man of many talents. He directed the documentary Church of Felons, the award-winning film about addiction, loss, and redemption. He founded Sermon Gear, which provides high-quality media to small churches and missions. Co-founded the Entre Institute, which provides digital training and live coaching for digital entrepreneurs. Created the 24-hour product launch to help new entrepreneurs get their business off the ground fast. And most recently, he founded DropFunnels, the first all-in-one marketing system built on WordPress, and is currently disrupting the marketing industry. He currently lives in Osceola, Wisconsin with his wife. Jordan, welcome to the show, my man.
Rory, okay, so I just got to lay it out there, man. Not only did you pronounce my last name right, but you somehow dug into my entire history, everything. So kudos to you. No one's able to dig that deep. So yeah, that's great. I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, I like to have the perspective, and really look at the whole person. So, a little bit more personal background. So you were born in Sandwich, Illinois. Is that right?
Who are you? Do you have a private investigator?
Yeah, keep him on payroll.
Jeez Louise, this is getting weird. I feel like I don't even need to be
The only reason I asked, how long did you live there? Because I lived in Bloomingdale, Illinois, which is only an hour from you from 92 to 97. It was on my, my journey with my parents moving to find work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was born there. My dad's a pastor and my mom's a teacher. So his first church plant was in Sandwich, Illinois. It's a church called Harvest Chapel. And anyway, so he's really an entrepreneur at heart. The only difference between church planters and entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurs get paid. That's the only difference. So he's done multiple church launches and then he gets it going and he passes it on to someone else and does it again, that type of thing. So he's on his third up here, and that's why we're living up here in Osceola. But yeah, was born in Sandwich Community Hospital. And most people think it's a fake place, but it's
it sounds fake. Yeah.
It sounds fake. Yeah.
So help me understand, just for anybody who may not be familiar. So a church plant. So is that your father's a part of a bigger church and they're sort of trying to reach out and branch, or is it's literally just putting a flag in the ground and starting a brand new church? I mean, what does that look like? Yeah.
So he's part of a denomination that, in general, it's almost like a franchise, that type of thing. I guess is the best correlation to make, is that he'd be part of a particular denomination and his job was to go out and to create churches in communities that didn't have those types of resources. So
got it.
That was his passion and purpose in life. And so for me, I think honestly, it kind of bled into helping me to see it's been two things. It's kind of been a double-edged sword in certain ways, but for me, it's been hey, you need to go out there and make something happen for yourself. And whether you win or lose, you get the wins or the spoils. The spoils are the losses from that. Mm-hmm. But also how critical it is to take care of people and to serve people at the highest level. So that's been one of my most critical tenets, is to really overwhelm and over deliver and overserve with people. And I think that's partially why we're seeing some really cool, results in the things that we do. We really try to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but specifically in the internet marketing world, because I think there's so much of that is the opposite. It's very much take value, and I'm going to give you just enough for you to pay me. And I'm going to kind of keep some of the information behind a higher paywall. And it's just, there's a lot of that sort of negativity in the internet marketing world. So it's just really refreshing to hear about anybody approaching it with, hey, how much can I give and serve and do things like that?
Yeah. And honestly, I think we're exiting the phase of bro marketing, right, and overhype marketing and the income awards and all those things that people are just is this real? Or it's not real. Right. Most of that stuff is just so fabricated and fake. It's everyone's talking about it grosses me out, just the scabbiness and the incestuousness that can happen in the internet marketing space. It just doesn't have to be that way. So that's why I think we're moving into the age of relationship marketing and trust-based marketing, and truly putting your name and your face on the line to back up what you're putting out there. I think I've got the Cake Credo, which is the 100 laws to live by. And I keep this on my desk as a constant reminder of the 100 rules, but number 16 is competence starts with guaranteeing your work. And I think of that often when it comes to like, am I serving people to the level that I would guarantee that they would get something by interacting with me? And that's what I think the era that we're moving into is.
Yeah. And I'm really excited about that because I believe a lot of the same things you believe. And I think the market as a general rule is just tired of rented Lamborghini pics and the mansions on the ocean and just all this kind of like, is it real? Is it not real? Nobody knows. Some people buy the product and just, yeah, like you said, I think bro marketing is probably the best word for it. I'm curious. So your dad was obviously full into planting churches. I don't know. How many did he do, or do you remember? Did he go straight from Sandwich to Osceola, or were there a bunch of stops that you guys took?
Yeah. So he's on his third now. We did one in Sandwich, Illinois, then one in Colorado Springs, and then one up here in Osceola, because there wasn't an Assemblies of God church in this area. So he came and planted one here. His vision was always to do 4. So I think, I think he just turned 67 or something like that. So, but the dude is like, he's more ripped than I am. And he's got like the energy of like a 16-year-old kid. So he could probably do another and be just perfectly fine. I think he probably will. We'll have to see, but he's a fighter. That's for sure.
So I'm curious, when you were growing up, what was his influence like? Because obviously you said that you developed this, desire to go out and serve and to give to people. Was there ever any pressure or, sort of influence on the direction that you should go in, or was it always kind of left to you to decide who you wanted to be?
Yeah, man, what a question. Things were never perfect. I don't think that anyone can look back at their childhood and say that it was perfect. When you have my dad being a pastor, my mom being a teacher, their like gross total income for the year was like $36,000 a year growing up. Right. I had 5 brothers and sisters
Oh, wow.
We had a big family. Right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to not having a whole lot, it ends up like creating stress. Right. Not to mention, like his flock, his congregation really did become, I think, a part of his journey, but by extension became part of our journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can be that stress point. It's like, who comes first? In fact, last night I just spent hours with my dad. We're like best friends on the planet right now, but it was very stressful growing up. It was like, what do we do? What do we believe? Like who's on what is our value system and whatnot? And so as a kid, when you're mostly selfish and it's mostly about you and whatnot,
right, it
can be tough to compensate and to understand that. And so I only understand it now as an adult, but yeah, he never pushed us to do anything but to work. That was his thing. It's like, you have to work. And I didn't get that. I don't think until I ever read, I was like maybe 19, I read like the Rich Dad Poor Dad or 4-Hour Workweek stuff, and finally figure out this entrepreneurial thing and understand about like creating value in the world and solving problems is how you create an income. And so, but I was like, why would I want to work? Like, that just sounds so hard. It sounds like a chore. I had to like reframe my mind, and it took forever to do so. But there was no pressure from that side. But I think, it was a very unique environment to grow up in, because it's very rare for PKs, pastors' kids to kind of jump into the entrepreneurial space, because they'll typically go and become pastors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm sure it's probably not only that particular career, but in a lot of careers that parents have, there is kind of a either spoken or unspoken pressure that, hey, this is the best job, or this is, especially in the religious sense, this is the holiest job, right? If you want to be a man of God, or you want to do those things, and this is sort of the end of that, the end all be all of that progression. Again, whether or not it was ever said, it would have been very easy for you to feel like that, oh, I should definitely do the same thing. So I think it's a credit to your parents, or maybe to your rebellion, I don't know, but that you went and did your own thing, because obviously I think that has served you very well. And now you're in turn serving other people really well with it. So I think a lot of value has come from that. You mentioned as a child kind of deciding like what do we value? What's important. I'm curious if those conversations were verbal in your family, or if this was like more of an internal discussion that you were having as you grew up and kind of saw the struggle between your dad and the congregation and the family and just all the stress that came from that.
Yeah, I don't think I could reconcile it until I kind of became of age. I
Mm,
think most things, I'm sure you can relate, don't make sense until you can see it in hindsight. When
right.
you're in the moment, it's a little severe to, and any processing that you're doing is almost inaccurate.
Right.
Anything, almost even now, like 100% of my instant reactions are wrong. And so anytime that something happens and I react to it, it's always that wrong response. And
Right.
in the same token, when you're growing up and you see, like, look, I don't want to discount anyone's journey. Everyone's gonna, react to things differently. But like as a kid, if you're going through a trial and whatnot, your perspective of what's actually going on is almost just the tip of the iceberg to understand
Right.
what's really happening and process that. I take that into my own kids too. I've got two boys, 4 and 1, and I'm trying to, as a parent now it's like, it's funny, like the older you get, the smarter your parents get, right? It's like, wait a second, they actually understood this, right?
Right.
And you kind of can kind of relate a little bit, but I start to try to understand them better and try to listen to them better, because I know what it felt like in that role when you're one of many,
Yeah.
to maybe not feel listened to
Yep.
in that regard. And perspective is reality. So
Yep.
if you feel that way, whether it's the truth or not the truth, maybe there's a victim mentality that can occur there in certain cases. But I think it's, the day that I die is going to be the smartest day that I'm alive. But until then, I'm pretty sure every day I just feel dumber and dumber, because it's like, man, I didn't know that back then. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Every new thing that I learn is I think, a blessing.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. I had a very similar experience. We only had three. It was me and my two brothers when I was a kid, but my parents were. There was a lot of conflict between them up until they got divorced, and so there was a lot of that specific thing of not feeling listened to, or
Yeah.
feeling that even if you had a problem, it wasn't as big as this other problem, and so you should just kind of keep quiet. And at least that's how I internalized it. I think my brothers probably had their own coping mechanisms, but yeah, it's really fascinating to look back now. And just like you said, and realize, man, that felt very real to me in the moment as a kid. I mean, you internalize this, like, I'm not valuable or worthy or whatever. And you look back and you're like, man, like at this age, especially having kids now, I'm able to have compassion for my parents and be like, oh man, like what they were going through with each other was very tough. I get it. It's kind of, it's up to me at the end of the day anyway, to deal with whatever I've brought out of childhood. It's nobody else's responsibility but my own. Yeah, that's super valuable. So
Wow.
talking about the influences on you, you went to college, right? College of the Ozarks, was it Missouri?
Dude, I swear, who are you? Like, how do you know everything about my
It's on the
life?
internet.
Like, I need to go like purge Google from like my past or something.
The internet's forever, Jordan.
Oh, geez. Oh, boy.
So, and you study theater, right? Theater and mass communication. So I'm just really curious, as you were, you're growing up in your teens, you're going to high school, obviously you're coming up towards college. I know in almost every family, there's that pressure to, like, you got to go to college and get a degree to have a better life. I just want to hear you talk about how you made the decision to go, or why you decided to go, and how you ended up doing the theater thing, and what the decision was there.
Yeah. So when you're in like a pastor's family, you have to do everything, right? So we did dramas, we were in the band, we were like, you have to learn every instrument, and it's just all that kind of stuff. And I'm grateful, because now I can play guitar, the bass, the piano, the drums. I'm like very accomplished in the comparative sense.
That's awesome.
So I've always loved the arts. I've always been very right-brained. I'm not analytical. In fact, I feel like you and your team, you guys are going to be helping me with a lot of left brain analytical, traffic driven type of things.
Right.
But I've always been very creative side, much more emotional right brain. And so I went to college because in high school, I really thrived through theater and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of creating experiences for people. So that led all the way up into even creating a film, and those types of things, but also creating a lot of theatrical experiences for people. And there's something in me that has this deep drive and desire to create things that people love. Now it sounds fun and like, hey, that's a great drive, but it also becomes a deep curse.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that I end up going so far and above and beyond, even answering the lowest common denominator questions, even in our Facebook groups or whatever, it becomes difficult for me to delegate those things out because I want to create things that people love and thrive with and just are exuberant about. So
Right.
one of my greatest downfalls is not taking, like, criticism is, I guess is fine, but just like when people come out and hate on something that you created, it's almost like you give birth to something beautiful.
Right.
And they hate on that thing. It's almost like this just dagger to the heart. Because I want to create things that people love. And that's been a constant drive. There's probably some deep psychological stuff going on there about childhood and wanting to compare and do well and to thrive and in that regard. But I've always felt like service to people is the utmost. And to reconcile that as an adult, I think can take a couple different forms.
Mm-hmm.
On the positive side, it means that you can really deliver a great experience to people. And like, you're kind of putting on a show, right? So
yeah,
you're putting on like, hey, come into this world and you get to experience this environment and you get to see what this is like to taste what a different perspective could look like and get a different result and those types of things. On the downside, I think it can mean that you overexpend yourself trying to please people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably one of the greatest curses. I envy people who can look objectively at a situation or a client or whatever and say, I can separate myself and my emotion from that and just say, you got what you got and that's done. You know, I just can't do that. I think it's been like it's probably my greatest weakness. Maybe also the greatest strengths. I'm not sure. But it would be, I don't know, maybe you have an answer. I feel like you've done enough research on me to find out.
I mean, it sounds like more strength than weakness, but yeah, I mean, I can definitely see where, you can have a hard time because let's just face it, there are just crappy people on the internet. Like, they exist. Like, there are people that just aren't going to be happy with anything you do, no matter what you do.
Can I just like, can I tell you this? Us moving from Facebook ads to YouTube ads was one of the happiest days of my life because they can't give you hate comments on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So now we advertise on YouTube because
absolutely
Facebook is a cesspool of just negativity and opinions and
yeah, and it's such a it's kind of a one-sided deal because the type of people that are very positive, uplifting, like, they're just not the ones to leave comments necessarily. Like, they're
yeah. Like, happy people don't write emails. It's been like the theme of my week.
Yeah. I mean, it's the people that are, are the ones that just are angry. They're looking for something to lash out at and they find your comment section. And it's just, if I had a dime for every time I've gotten a negative comment from somebody who hasn't even interacted with the business
or ever bought ever,
or thought they bought from us, but it was another, it's just like, oh my gosh, man. It's just, the headaches from dealing with that. So yeah, I can totally relate to that.
I think we just became best friends. I'm not sure. Like, should we get bunk beds like for activities? And I'm not sure, but yeah. Okay. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. We'll just police the comment section together. So I going back to the question. So that desire to create something that people love, is that when, as you sat on the precipice of looking into college, was that what drove you into theater? Like, I want to make things that people love, or was it more of a kind of an occupational decision of like, oh, I think this is work that I would enjoy, or how did that come up?
Again, hindsight does become 2020, and I got a Bachelor of Science degree. So it was a BS degree in theater. So I pretty much call it my BS degree. It's like getting a degree in make-believe.
Yeah.
So,
I wouldn't have guessed that theater would have been a science.
No, dude. The only difference was you took a science class instead of like a language class or whatever. It was a mess. Anyway, but yeah, it was. I think I was just in college. I founded kind of a commercial production company. So I was like making commercials for people. I was in Branson. It's kind of a big show busy type of area. So got to work at a television station in town there and whatnot. So I was doing that. And I feel like I think I learned about my sophomore year in college that the paper that you have means literally nothing. People do not care what you've done. They care what you can do for them. So as soon as that happened, I was like, dude, just give me a dang degree so that I can like say I have a degree, or buy me the time to learn the skills and figure this whole thing out. I'm super thankful for it because I met my wife there and made some great dear friends there, and that whole thing. But I didn't live on campus. I was hustling at night. I was building businesses and trying to figure out the internet marketing game at that stage. And
sorry, real quick, what year was this?
So let's see, I would have gone to college around 2008. I think I was a super senior, so I graduated like 2013 or something like that.
So, I mean, but anyway, I mean, still like in the early days of internet marketing. Sorry. So I just wanted that perspective. So
yeah. And I created a video in a contest. I was doing video contest.
Oh,
and
nice.
so I won first place in this contest for a company called 99 Designs, which is a design
No way.
firm. So I was their front page video for about 2.5 years, and
That's awesome.
They didn't even know, they didn't know, but I shot on a green screen in my college, in my low income apartment that I had there in Branson, Missouri. I shot it in a closet, and that created like this insane buzz. People saw that video, and I was into animations, and I built the whole thing myself and scripted it and appeared in the video, and they thought that I was an actor. Like they thought the person that did, no, I did everything. Like I made people think that it was like this whole agency. It was not. It was like me in a closet. But then a couple companies saw that work, and they're like, holy cow, get that guy on board. And I remember that they offered me a job working for them to create a lot of video content and whatnot. And they offered me $8,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
And for me, moving from maybe $2,000 to 8,000, dude, like my version of celebrating, I went to Ruby Tuesdays with my wife. Like that was my version of just so everyone knows the comparison.
Yeah, it's like a $30 meal probably.
I got Ruby Tuesdays to celebrate. And that $8,000 for me was like, holy cow, there's an industry that will pay me that much money to make videos for them or to solve the specific problem for them. And that was this light bulb that went off. That's like, there's got to be a lot of other people out there that want problems solved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always talk about, especially in our groups, there's really only 3 things that people need really short-term and long-term. It's mindset, skill set, and tool set. You just need the tools, the picks and the shovels that are going to serve you well and help you to be fast. You need the skill set. Pick one skill and just become great at it. I believe in Malcolm Gladwell's mastery, like 10,000 hours, put in the work, be the best in the world at that thing, or the best in your world. And then the mindset, just get out of your own dang way. Like your own objections and your own opinion of yourself is going to be the primary driver for you to quit doing what you're doing. And if you reject your own opinions and reject your own objections, you will flourish. It's the same reason that Tony Hawk could do that 1080 or whatever it was. And then like 30 people copied him. It's because he's crazy enough to go out there and make it happen. And then everyone else is like, oh, wait, that's possible. I can go out and copy him now. It's the 4-minute mile. 20 people in the next week ran a 4-minute mile. Why couldn't they do that before? We just have to get out of our own way in those regards. So yeah, it's all kind of coalesced in every new year. I was a ShamWow salesman at an outdoor mall with the carpet and the whole thing. And that taught me sales, and the theater degree taught me presentation, and the mass comm taught me tech skills about web and design. And I worked at the Disney store, and that's where I met my wife actually when I was like 20 years old or something. And that taught me retail. That taught me about like economics and scale and leading a team and those things. And I think every part of our journey makes us the person that we're going to be down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And you've talked about, you sort of, I say lightly touched on some topics that I think are really important. And I would love to hear your perspective on, especially from the perspective of somebody who might be listening to this, maybe still working in a 9-to-5 or have recently lost their 9-to-5 because everything that's going on in the world, and thinking, I would love to be an entrepreneur and I would start something new. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was that you need to find that one thing and develop mastery at it. I'm just curious, as somebody who's seemed to have done so many things across so many realms, how do you think about that? How would you advise somebody to do that? And how are you applying that in your own life?
Yeah. So I love the rule of one. I just love keeping things simple. I think you need to pick one offer, build one funnel or one path,
right, and
one traffic source. So if anyone doesn't know what that means, you need one thing that you can provide to the marketplace that solves just a specific problem. So if you think about, I think probably the worst case scenario, and I work with a lot of like direct sellers and affiliates and network marketers and people who are just kind of getting into the digital marketing game.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing is you becoming a commodity. There's nothing wrong with selling other people's products, but you have to sell it in a way that makes it unique, that you are creating a solution in the marketplace that does give value, right? So don't just be like a weight loss coach. Create a health system, create a program that somebody can come through. Don't just be an affiliate of a shampoo. Help someone develop a system for marketing that shampoo so that they can create their own business on the other side. These are solutions versus commodities. So having one specific offer, and that's the hardest thing for new people, is like, okay, what do I sell? The greatest thing you can do is not to split your decision and making the caloric energy that you spend making decisions. Don't do it across a ton of different offers and different things and scatter yourself. Focus on one thing for 3 months, dude. Just find for 3 months and see what happens versus trying 5 different things. I've got 2 major companies, primary companies right now, and each of them only has 1 product, 1 offer, 1 funnel, and 1 traffic source. And these are companies that are scaling to be huge. And so if that's any indication of like, once you get to a stage, you can add new products to that suite. You can add new traffic. You can add new funnels. But people tend to just do so many things at once that not even a professional, not even myself, I couldn't do that many things at once.
Right.
So far be it for newbies to think that they should, right? It's a death sentence before you even start. So pick one thing to sell, pick one funnel or a path. It could be a Facebook group. That could be a funnel. An email list could be a funnel. Building an actual funnel could be a funnel.
Right.
And then just having one path that you hone in and you focus on that for months and months on end, and you obsess about making it great. And then just a traffic source. If it's paid, great. Get great at one source.
Right.
If it's organic, become great at relationships and Facebook Lives and building that value within an ecosystem. Like Facebook's a great place to do that. YouTube's a great place to do that. And focusing on the one single thing is going to compound your results. It's almost like, would you rather spend $5 on 20 stocks or put $100 into one stock and let that compound over multiple years? You're going to have 10 times the income from that single stock. Now, again, I know that's an extreme example because diversification can be important too, but people are going to learn, like, especially as you go down the pike, having focus on things is far more powerful than having 10 business models and trying to make them all work.
Yeah. And I think, especially for anybody who's thinking about making the jump in entrepreneurship, whether they're there now, they at some point will be presented with that conundrum of like, oh, I just want to do more things. Well, if one project is a little bit good, 10 projects has to be great. And it's like, no, it actually has the reverse effect, because like you said, now you're taking your 100% focus on this one thing and you're dividing it. Now you're only getting 10% to give each of these projects. And I think it's, I won't say 100% it's universal, but every entrepreneur I've talked to has either struggled with that or at least mentally struggles with like, oh, I want to do everything. And it's a real
shiny
threat.
objects, right? They're everywhere.
Yeah, seriously. There's always something new. And I'm curious, the other thing that you mentioned, you talked about mindset and sort of getting out of our own way. And I think that's huge no matter what you're doing. I mean, that's an example could be somewhere there's probably a pastor's kid who doesn't want to be a pastor and isn't sure, doesn't believe that they can be something else. And so I'm just curious how you think about that for yourself, because another one of those common misconceptions for people is they might see you and be like, oh, he's sure of himself. He's got it all figured out. He's good every step of the way. But I would imagine even now with DropFunnels, there's probably moments where you're like, you run into some of those limiting beliefs, or maybe just not necessarily limiting, but maybe kind of broken paradigms.
Limiting beliefs. Yeah.
So I'm just curious how you handle those now and what your process is for getting past that.
Yeah, man. Solid. So I always like to tell people, like, when people think like, hey, you had this handed to you or whatever, and like everyone can like invent their own rags to riches story.
Yeah.
Like I'll show you pictures, bro. Like the silver spoon that we got fed from was from Goodwill. It was like, we got that spoon there, and
right.
it was on the floor and we didn't actually buy it. We stole it. No, I'm just kidding. It was When you come from very little, it gives you this, I think, this powerful and palpable forced humility to know what it's like to be at the bottom. And I think that's why I've really gravitated towards trying to help people who are just starting out. And yeah, it's hard work, but what do you want to work a job the rest of your life? Because that's the
Right.
alternative.
Yeah.
So man, I think that's a really tough question to answer. And I think you might be the best podcast interviewer of all time, because these are like
You're very generous.
These are so
If that's an award, though, I'll take it.
I'm like diving deep into like my hidden scars of like the past. But
well, I mean, I can make it more tactical. Is there a more recent time where you remember kind of becoming conscious of like, oh, the way that I'm thinking about this is broken? Or
yeah, I'll give a perfect example. So like when you don't come from much, you tend to carry the baggage of a scarcity mindset, right? And no profitable company has ever been built on a scarcity mindset. It's not possible.
Right.
You can have a lot of users, you can have a huge email base of other freebie seekers and that kind of thing. But it's almost like Craigslist got really big in that regard, but it's like, it's mostly a free service. The only thing they charge for is like this one tiny piece, and they've done really well for that. But I think carrying a scarcity mindset from not having much, it does two really dangerous things. Number one, it makes you undercharge and under deliver, right? So people who should be charging $10,000 are charging $97 for a course that is worth far more than that, right? And they're not seeing sales at the 97 because people are saying there's no way it's $97 or even $9.97 for that matter. It's worth way more. You're undercharging. It can't be worth that much. They're saying no, right? They don't believe that. And then two, you tend to not invest in yourself. That's been my kind of downfall that over the past decade I've had to build in, is that like when you come from like a large family, everyone knows that like just resources are scarce, attention is scarce.
Right.
And
yeah, absolutely.
even when it's being spread across, like if your parents are like, it's like their students or their congregation or whatever, it's like we had a great relationship and whatnot. But like when resources are scarce, you carry that into your adulthood and you think resources are always going to be scarce. So what that does is it causes you to hoard. So for me, people would be disgusted with how much cash I have, like literally in a safe in my house, and how many checking accounts are full of cash and just insane amounts of stacking this thing, because what it had created, and over the last 3 years I've been working through that to escape it and invest more in myself and in growth, is that liquidity and whatnot is fine, but cash is literally a downfall. It's a curse, right? That you are losing value. You're spending money to keep money.
Right.
In the same way that if you stocked, I remember Y2K, we had this huge pantry full of food because we were terrified of like what would happen or whatever.
Yeah.
All of that food is rotting.
Right.
The food on your shelf, the money in your account, the skills that you are underutilizing, the people that you're not tapping into to delegate, they're rotting and they're molding, and it's cancerous. And you are starving and dying at your own volition because you're not utilizing. It's like that parable of the talents, right? That the person who hid it in the ground, he said, "Depart from me," because you were, unfaithful with the resources that you had. And, although a talent was a measurement of money at that time for that parable, I think of it as actual talents, of actual skill sets.
Right.
Like my ability to make video, I would be squandering that if I didn't go make a film. My ability to market is squandered if I don't go and build a huge community and help them to do the same thing. It's like we need to take a really, really deep and rooted look into our own inventory, our own skill set, and expose our weaknesses quickly, rip off that Band-Aid, and determine what are we really good at that we can utilize and start investing in. So that's like 2 days ago, I just spent $200K on like 2 investment properties, and I'm just like, throw it out, just go. Yeah. I've got 18 on staff now, and I'm just like spending like an insane person traditionally would, just to, not wastefully, because I think like resources are still critical. But I'm investing in other people, investing in relationships, investing in scale and growth, because scarcity will only keep yourself stuck, right? And you're robbing your gift from other
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. And that's so true. And really kind of a revelation for me. I mean, I've known about the, if you're just saving your money or keeping it stashed away, obviously you're losing out on the benefits of investing and things like that. But it's a really eye-opening correlation to draw the similar thing to your personal talents. Because a fundamental belief of mine is that everybody has a unique purpose. And my life experience has shown me that most people, for one reason or another, are not stepping into that purpose fully. Even some of them, like you said, they're charging 97 when they should be charging 9997. And yeah, that's really valuable to think about. Basically you have these unique talents that you're given or blessed with this purpose. And if you don't use it, it's just going bad. And cancerous, I think, is probably the best word for it. That's really insightful. So you talked about doing the film, and I'd like to talk about Church of Felons for a second. And I'm curious, you were the director. What does your role look like as a director? I mean, what is your sort of obligation to the project in that position?
Yeah. So, Church of Felons, it's up on Amazon Prime. It's free for anybody to watch. And it was my version of taking everything that I had learned at that point and creating something out of it that could do some public good. Right. At that point in time, and again, hindsight is 2020, was the worst version of myself to create that film.
Oh, no way.
Because I did everything myself. Everything. I shot it, I directed it, I wrote it. The voiceover is my voice. The hands writing at the book at the beginning and the end, the journal is mine. I was, and I bootstrapped it myself. So like at any bootstrapped level project, you have to wear a lot of hats in that regard.
Right.
But it was my first and only feature film. And really, I know impacted a lot of lives, and it's been seen in a ton of countries, and it's seen multiple thousands of times a week now, which is really incredible. But yeah, I shot it on a single camera and kind of created it as I went. It took about 2.5 years to create, and I edited it down. And there's certain things you can't do that are required to do for that type of a project. So getting closed captions done, getting sound mixing is critical. Getting what's called a DCP, it's a digital cinema package. It's like to deliver that to theaters and film festivals and all those types of things for them to screen it. Legal and compliance and errors and omissions, insurance, all of that was part of it. But I really took it upon myself to do everything on my own. And even my own family, they're like, what are you? Actually, the film it's at my home church. So that's my dad who's in the film. I don't say that in the film. And I never even introduce him. Like, he doesn't have a name in the film because that's not the point. The point is about the characters in the film. But I filmed that whole thing there and had really exclusive access in this area because I live here to get the shots that I was able to at the drug raid and the various like following steps. And there's kind of a twist at the end that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't there filming this whole sequence of events occurring. And I realized that it taught me that it confirmed to me that I do have a lot of skills. And I would say that it also kind of burnt me out because I did not delegate enough. But I'm very, very thankful for the film and thankful for all the incredible good I think it did. I think I might've mentioned we put about 8 people into addiction recovery centers and funded their way into that. And so it really did a tremendous amount of good, and it taught me a lot about myself and about persistence. You cannot do a project for 2.5 years without a single trace of reward unless you are so dedicated to that vision that you're just a little bit crazy, right?
Absolutely.
So it taught me about longevity and environment and persistence through any project.
Yeah. And I think that's super valuable nowadays. Like we were talking about earlier with that shiny object syndrome. I mean, it's rare to find somebody that can just put their head down into a thing, and even more rare to find somebody that can do it, like you said, without any reward or sort of payoff for that full 2.5 years. I think that's great. Yeah. So you did answer one of the questions I did have, is how you got permission to go on that raid. So for anybody who's listening, Church of Felons follows the story of 4 recovering addicts in Polk County, Wisconsin. I think it's one of the top counties in the nation in terms of addiction and drugs and alcohol problems and things like that. So it follows their story and just, really sheds light onto that whole process and what that life is like in this particular area. Osceola Community Church, is that right?
Yep.
Is his dad's church, and it's kind of at the center of this where these, recovering addicts end up as part of their community and things like that. But one of the scenes was literally on a drug raid. And I had that thought as I was watching. I was like, how did they get permission to go on this raid? I'm not sure how that's possible.
Yeah. It was the first time they had ever let anyone into that because they're very closed off. They don't like journalists. In fact, most of the cops there hated my guts being there. But I literally emailed over to the kind of the drug corps or whatever, the leader, the guy there. And he's like, we have a raid tomorrow at 4 a.m. Don't tell anyone. Show up at the airport at this time, at this location, and buckle up. And so I had my camera there. They didn't give me anything. They were throwing the concussion grenades, 3 different meth raids. And it was this it was just this surreal experience of what it's like to choose that path. Mm-hmm. And these people that are coming out, these are just these broken human beings that have been riddled with addiction for years and are physically paying the price. One of the cops told me that on a previous raid that they had thrown one of the flashbang grenades inside, which is part of their modus operandi. It's what they do. Mm-hmm. And it threw it into a crib where a baby was sleeping, and it destroyed, it killed the baby there. Wow. And this is just that world that exists that's just under the surface was so visceral and painful that no one knows is happening in every town in the United States. These drug raids are happening all the time. Right. They're not in the papers. They're not in the news. There's your next door neighbor is a drug addict. Your next door neighbor is an alcoholic. Your next door neighbor is literally distributing controlled substances and could be in a very rich part of the neighborhood being raided by 30 cops in riot gear and throwing grenades in your house. It's this is how far it's come for this. But also on the other side of the coin is it taught me about grace and forgiveness and I know you've seen the film as well, that there are certain people who've been deeply affected by this and impacted and harmed by the choices of people who decide to go down that road of addiction, right? And how painful that can be, but the forgiveness that can exist and the second chances that can exist for people who decide I did that, I embrace it, I own it, and I want a better path and a better life, and how people surround that person around that. And I think that that's part of the human experiment, is that just maybe if you truly seek forgiveness and second chances, that maybe it's possible for you.
Yeah. And I was surprised, and I don't know if everybody sees it the same way, but when I watched it towards the end, or by the end at least, I found myself actually rooting for the addicts who in I guess in a general sense could potentially be the villain, right? It's these are the people that have broken the law, have possibly hurt people, caused, death and chaos and mayhem. And so, but by the end of it, you really have presented it in a different light where you're you really want these people to win, or I did at least. And you become sensitive to the fact that, there's the guy that drinks and drives and ends up killing somebody and only gets a year. And then there's the guy that gets life for drinking and driving and killing 2 people. And now I was sitting there asking myself, well, which one of those is right? And is there sort of a cut and dry answer about how it should be? And so it opens up kind of some very complicated discussions about addiction and how we police that and treat that legally.
Yeah. And I hope that it helps people. The primary demographic that I was kind of going after was just general population. Anyone could see this kind of thing. And those people, what was incredible, those were the most judgmental people that had seen the film, which is really incredible. They were the ones saying, I mean, I say judgmental kind of subjectively, that they were these people should burn, keep them in jail forever, that type of thing. But the audience that came out to say, my brother did that, drunk and drank and drove and got this thing. My sister did this. My dad did this. and these people saying like, I've been there and I know what it feels like to not only be that person or to have a loved one. And in the film, you saw the DA, what happens with him there, that nobody is exempt from this. I don't care what status or who you are, that, you know, these choices have ramifications, and they cut through socio-economic ties, racial, religious. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's the same as the coronavirus. It doesn't care who you are or where you are or how much money you have. It's like, this is it's a curse upon society that that can affect really, I think, really anybody. So I would hope that people learn grace through it.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think that it's very easy to, I guess, sort of feign or pretend fanaticism around addiction in terms of your opinion. It's very easy to be like, well, all addicts, you know, drinking and driving should be illegal. You should get life in prison. It's like, well, you say that, but addiction is not relegated to one particular, you know, socioeconomic status or one neighborhood. Like there are billionaires who are addicted to drugs. There are poor people. There are Indians, there are Americans, there are Canadians. I mean, addiction is a human problem, right? And I think it's really not doing it justice to just kind of act like it doesn't exist and sort of pretend that, well, if I don't see it, it's not my problem, it'll be their problem. It's like, no, it's a real thing. And the one thing that I'm always trying to be sensitive of is the idea that I could become addicted at any time. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but I think it's dangerous to sit there and say, well, I'm past addiction, or I'm not capable of addiction. It's like, well, you don't know, right? Like it's hard to say what might happen to me or what choices I might make if I suddenly lost my entire family or suffered some setback. And so I think it's really, you know, good in that sense. It hopefully opens some people's minds to at least having a conversation about what addiction is, who's really subjective to it, how do we protect ourselves and support people who are recovering. And I'm really optimistic about a lot of the conversations that will come out of the movie. I'm curious, because I saw on the website that you have obviously, you know, been shown at festivals and churches and movie places. What are some of the conversations that have come out of that have surprised you? And on the opposite side of that, are there conversations that you really hoped would come out that you did see finally come to fruition?
Yeah. And I mean, on the note of addiction, it's like everyone's got something, right? Call it porn, alcohol, control,
your iPhone,
sex, money, your iPhone, your relationships, your friendships. Right. It's like we can cut and splice any addiction that you want, and we can find it in almost anybody, and almost all of it relates to comfort and control.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always what people are seeking, and almost all of it is selfish. 100% of it is selfish.
Yep.
Any addiction is pure selfishness. So I guess what I found through the film, and I tried to, as soon as it was released, I just sat back as a listener. I was very leaned in through the process. And then as soon as it was released, I very much like leaned out to be like, okay, here it is, people. What's going to happen with this thing? And I found that there was a tremendous amount of new awareness. That was the biggest wake-up call, I think, is that so many people are not aware of what's happening right underneath their nose.
Right.
And it's everywhere. We happen to be in a county that is bad for meth and other amphetamines and, you know, a lot of controlled substances and that kind of thing, but we're not unique, right?
Right.
We're not the worst in the country, and, you know, it's one of them, but I mean, there's an incredible amount. I know that actually, like, even during this Corona thing, like, alcoholism has spiked.
Wow.
There's been a massive amount of, you know, controlled substances throughout just by being locked in and that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's been kind of a wake up call, I think.
And obviously it centers, you know, central to the movie is your father's church. And so I have a lot of sort of sympathy and empathy for him and everything that he goes through. Because not only is he, again, like you said earlier, just wearing every hat. I mean, as the sort of the pastor of a small church, I mean, he has it's not like he has a whole team of people that he can just delegate stuff. I mean, the movie shows him out, you know, digging the dirt and sort of marking off the parking and like, with his bare hands digging a trench. And it's just kind of wild to think about. I'm curious, is there, what has been the effect on on the church, or has there been any effect since the release of the movie?
Yeah. So people thought that it was like an advertisement for the church, and it's like, that's not how you advertise, right? Like, you understand you have to make things look good to make things advertise, right?
Yeah.
It's the church has moved to 2 services. They're still serving that community and whatnot. But there was no, like, here's the thing, Rory, I'll tell you, we showed it in our state capitol for our senators. We went to the Wisconsin state capitol to tell them about it. Cause like state statute 125.01a says that any child of any age can consume alcohol in the vicinity of a parent or guardian at any restaurant, tavern, or bar. Right. So I can give my 4-year-old alcohol at a bar and they can't do a thing about it. It's part of the statutes.
It's crazy.
It's out of this world that that's possible. We went and showed the film to them and we said, what can we do about this? And they said, we have bigger fish to fry. That was their actual answers. We have bigger things on the docket. And I get it. Like, they're stretched thin. There's a lot going on, but that was a pretty shocking realization that unless communities rise up to change things, there's not much that those in power can do.
Yeah. And, I think there's probably, there's a lot of weakness in general, I think, in waiting for some organization, like even the government, to save us. Right. I think, to your point, I think if we really want things to change, it does start at the individual level. It starts with that person admitting that they're addicted and getting help. It starts with the person no longer enabling them to be able to live it. I mean, it really is those individual efforts. So, yeah. Hopefully, if anybody sees it, after hearing this conversation, that there will be some level of inspiration in them of like, what action can I take to be able to, at least in my little circle of influence, to be able to prevent or, help people recover from addiction. But yeah, I think it's super necessary for sure. And I actually really liked, and I can, for what my opinion is worth on art, and it's not worth much. I really liked the visuals of the movie. I really loved the journal on the white background. I mean, just visually love the way that looked. I liked a lot of the shots that you did. I thought there was a lot of creativity with finding a shot in a way that allowed the screen to change and sort of create something new, but in a way that wasn't distracting. So I thought the way that you put it, I mean, it seemed just very professional, very, I wouldn't have guessed it was your first or only feature film. I thought it was really good and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime right now. I think everybody should definitely check that out. So when I introduced you, I rattled off like a million projects that you've been involved in. And
I don't know what, like, you're digging with the spade, man, I'll tell you.
So, well, I would love for you to kind of walk me through the journey. I guess we touched on the high points with the different projects in Sermon Gear to the movie to DropFunnels now. I mean, how have you decided where to go next? I guess would be the overarching question I have. I can sort of understand and honestly, the picture on Sermon Gear looked like it was a little bit older picture. How old's your oldest kid?
So I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Okay. So the website's at least 4 years old because it didn't mention kids on it. So
yeah, no, that thing is like 8 years old. I haven't touched it in like 6 years. So
it looks like a early 2000s type website. So I could totally see that. So I would just love, from college. So you graduate, you've got your degree. I'm just curious how you sort of ended up at these milestones of these different projects and what your thought process was at each one about where to go next and where to put your efforts.
Yeah. Everything, I'll tell you, it's like everything, as I mentioned, has led up to now. The power in learning, for like Sermon Gear, it was like, how do I create a product for an audience and sell it? So I was selling for $59 a year at a couple hundred people. And that was all about learning organic, like SEO ranking and whatnot. So that was like my first foray into WordPress sites. How do I make a beautiful WordPress site with a membership area that allowed people to log in and get access to that based on their membership? And so because I was non-technical at the time, I had to create that from scratch. And what it ended up being is like, and that's literally why DropFunnels now exist, is because of 8 years of creating infrastructures that can help me to get like 100% of that was organic. I didn't spend a penny on ads. It did pretty well for what it was doing. I didn't really understand email lists or any of that, any of the advanced aspects that we know now, but it was straight up like people searching on Google, how do I do this for my church or whatever? And they would find my site or whatever. And then the power of that organic. And, WordPress, Google has been quoted saying that 80 to 90% of the indexing issues that can happen are solved by being on WordPress.
Oh,
So
wow.
Google can index your content twice as easily as almost any other infrastructure that you could possibly be on. And so, there's a lot of people who have a vision and have a purpose and have a product they want to launch to the market. And the current model that exists on the marketplace is go get a funnel builder, build a funnel, drive paid ads. And people are saying, like, I see all these people making millions of dollars. Like, why am I not getting it? Kind of the response is that the infrastructure is wrong, right? They aren't built on something that can sustain them not only in the short term, but also in the long term. And so a lot of these platforms that help you to market online, they load very slowly. They have no SEO capability. They have no technical support to help you to get your stuff going. There's no strategy built into it either. So you're kind of left to your own devices to figure stuff out. And for me, that ended up being months and years and tens of thousands of dollars of investment and so much wasted time trying to get my vision into the marketplace. And so that's honestly why DropFunnels exists now, is because of every project from the film, the website there is built on optimized press. It took me 3 months to build that site just to make it look like I wanted, drag and drop or whatever is built on. It's a disaster. And it's like, and so now why I built this thing is to create an infrastructure that within minutes I can have what took me months to have before.
Yeah.
And instead of thousands of dollars a month, it cost me pennies to just have this thing that I can do anything. Actually, that's one of the biggest problems now, is that, especially with DropFunnels, is that people come in with this preconceived notion that I need websites and I need all these things and I have to connect it all in Kajabi and Kartra and all these pieces. And it's like, now that you don't need that, it exposes your weakness very quickly to realize, holy cow, I can build anything I can imagine. I can build anything with no code, no programming, no technical prowess. And suddenly it's like, oh man, it shines the mirror back at yourself to realize, holy cow, I need an offer that people want. And there's no professional procrastination keeping you like in busy work thinking that you're staying productive when you're really just staying distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, as soon as I first heard Aaron talking about it, I knew that there was so much value there. So for anybody who's maybe not in internet marketing world, WordPress is arguably, I think, probably the biggest, website building platform. I think it powers like a 30 or 50% of the internet. All websites are built on WordPress. I mean, it's bananas. And then you have this other section of the internet that is kind of I just came up with an offer and I need a couple of web pages up real fast. And so you have a lot of drag and drop builders like ClickFunnels and Lead Pages and all these others, but there are huge limitations with them. Advertising platforms don't like them. They won't tell you this, but they'll give you more expensive traffic or worse traffic, the tracking for your sales. It's just all kinds of problems. And so what Aaron has built is kind of the best of both worlds. He's taken the WordPress platform and built drag and drop builders that allow you to do websites, funnels, membership sites, everything. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be huge. So, I think we kind of skipped over the movie there. So you went from sermon gear, I guess that probably started your pain with the building websites, and then you went to the movie. So what did that transition look like when or I guess at any point, was the sermon gear a full-time website, or was that kind of always this little thing on the side that you were doing?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I've always been in the mode of solving my own problems or trying to solve someone that I love, solving their problems. So my dad's a pastor, right? And one of the issues was like, he didn't have media to put up on like the screens up there, like countdowns and backgrounds. And he's using these really crappy PowerPoint presentations. And I'm like, dude, come on now. Like, let me try to help you here. And like, I always want to pay back my parents. I don't feel like I ever can.
Right.
But so I built that site really to solve his problem. And so I was building, dozens of new pieces of media every week. And then I would just build it for him and then launch it to this site for people to subscribe and to get those downloads, directly based on a really affordable membership. So, and there's a huge niche market there. I think it taught me a lot about how to, I guess, effectively niche down your audience and find what's a very subset of people that need a specific problem solved. And you'll find that you can do tremendously well by not going like mass market. I'm not going to be a Target or a Walmart. I want to be like the biggest fish in the smallest pond possible is like the winning combination.
And was this something that you built before or during college, or did Sermon Gear get started after you had graduated?
Yeah, that was during college as well. So I was doing that as well as kind of the commercial. It was all about videos. I was just making videos like nonstop. So
at what point did Church of Felons get its birth? I mean, when did this become an idea? And, was that part of the 2.5 years to producing it, or was it an idea well before you actually started taking action on it?
So I grew up here in Osceola, in Wisconsin, and then I moved down to Missouri for a couple of years for college. And then I came back and I realized, holy cow, the addiction issue, I wasn't even aware of it. It's been the same for so long, but I had started to scrape underneath the surface and realize how horrible of a problem it was. And then inside our church, we had those 4 guys, the 4 felons who were in the movie. And I befriended them and heard their stories. And I was like, holy cow, this is unbelievable storytelling. Someone needs to tell your story.
Right.
And I was like, wait a second, I should tell your story. Like I should do this thing. And so I shot a little screen test and shared that out, and it went really well with Brian, who's I think the second story in there or something like that. And so shot like a little 5-minute screen test of that, and people loved it. And then I was like, okay, let's make this a thing. So over the next 2 years I shot, and then 6 months of editing, and then launched it out. And I think overall was really well received. And anything controversial, you're going to find that you're putting a target on your chest. And so you'll find some negativity and some people really not liking it. In fact, sadly, the judge who was in the film, for anyone who ends up watching it, the judge actually booked a meeting with me after the film and thought that we had portrayed our county really inappropriately. And I was like, wait a second, I'm exposing the addiction culture that exists in this area that you are literally sentencing people that you see every day. And you're telling me anyway, so I paid for her lunch and said, thanks, but no thanks. And like, it was shocking to me that the people in power still want to try to keep the polished demeanor of this beautiful area that we live in, and that really exposing what's really happening is how change can happen, but not by covering it up with ice cream and cake, right? And thinking that everything's perfect. Even those in power, I was shocked to see how much they wanted to kind of hide what was really going on.
Sure. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but the movie's out there, so now you can just hope for the best, and hopefully it gets the traction it needs and just continues to make changes for people.
Yeah.
So the movie came out 2016, is that right?
Yeah.
So what did the couple of years after that look like up until DropFunnels? I mean, I first heard about DropFunnels probably 4 or 5 months ago, maybe not that long. I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure it's been in the works for a while. So what did the transition from professional filmmaker to software as a service developer look like?
It's almost like I had a kid in that time. So, there's actually like a part of the brain that when you don't get enough sleep as a young parent, like you literally forget. So I literally don't even remember like what happened during that time. But I do know this, that like I knew that every project that I was building, every new business that I was building was difficult to deploy, difficult to build, new membership sites. I was really advanced in building memberships and experiences and whatnot for people. And it would take me months to build this. For anyone else, it would have taken either a development team, very expensive to hire out, or someone else months and months, 6 months or a year to build what I was building at the time. And I was like, there has to be a fix for this. So it literally didn't exist. The other option was difficult, expensive, hardcore WordPress, or funnel builders and short-term, slow-loading pages, no support, good luck with paid media. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And there wasn't. So I just decided, let's build it. So about 8 months ago, I kicked it off and just bootstrapped it to build this tool. And and waited for the shoe to drop, thought like, hey, there's no way it's possible, or else someone else would have built it, and no one's built it. No one's built it so far. So
Yeah, I think it perfectly satisfied a need that was in the market for sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. I'd love to get behind the scenes and do it a little bit. I've used Kartra, I've used ClickFunnels, I've used, all of them for one reason or another, WordPress, all that stuff. So I'm really excited that there's another sort of option there. One thing I've noticed in listening to you talk, and this seems to be a recurring trend with the people that I talk to, that kind of a foundational trait to the way that they operate is that they're self-directed. I mean, they're not walking down somebody else's path for them. They've chosen their own path. I would love to hear you talk about if you remember when you kind of became that way, when you decided, hey, this is my path, I'm going to walk down that way. And I asked that because honestly, I didn't even reach that point until I had to drop out of college after 2 years. And even then I was kind of forced into it. So I did the whole, you go to college, you go to high school, you go to college. Then when I was forced to drop out, I was forced to ask the question, well, what do you want to do now? Because there was no plan for that. So I'm just curious to hear you talk about when you sort of became the master of your own fate, so to speak, and how you think about that now in terms of, obviously a lot of probably people and projects competing for your attention and having to decide where do you go now?
Yeah, I'm a very firm believer that you can't follow anyone else's path. You can only draw inspiration from what other people have accomplished and done. And so I'm a huge advocate of hiring coaches and mentors who have gone ahead of you. So I do that regularly. I probably spend 50 grand a year on coaches and mentors and whatnot to grow myself. And every time it pays back in spades because it gives me a new perspective, a new way to look at things. And so that's been really powerful. But yeah, everyone just has to learn that it's literally impossible unless you have a time machine. You cannot go back and copy someone else's path and trajectory. You have to forge your own path. And that can be scary for people because they don't always feel like they're making the right decisions.
Sure.
And that's good news, that when you fail, you are learning how not to do something and you sharpen your own sword. And so those who have a very limited mindset or short-term mindset around producing things or creating businesses and whatnot. And if you have a short-term, I've had people reach out and say, like, I'm on my last $500. I'm like, dude, don't start a business.
Yeah, seriously.
It's not the time. You need to go get a job,
right?
And pay your dang bills. This is not the time to be risky, right? But it is a risk, and those who take risks, I think, get rewarded.
Yeah, that's a really valuable point. I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, but there is actually kind of a comfort in walking a path that somebody else lays before you, because if it doesn't work, it's not your fault. And the moment that you step out on your own and say, I'm going to chart my own course, I'm going to be a pioneer, do my own thing, or what have you, now all the responsibility is on you. If it fails or it doesn't go well, you can't really point the finger at anybody else. So there is kind of that emotional risk of embarking on something new as well, because if it doesn't go well, then you're the only one to quote unquote blame. Although, the irony of ironies, very few people are pointing the finger. It's, most people are still going to support you, but yeah, that's super valuable. I'm curious in everything you do, and you've talked a little bit about, creating things that people love and, just really wanting to give value and solve needs. I'm curious, how do you think about impact and contribution personally versus professionally? And is there much of a difference for you? And I mean, how are you sort of walking that out right now with DropFunnels, for example?
I want to make sure I'm understanding fully, like, how do I balance the two?
Just how do you think about impact and contribution? Like, do you, is that a driver in, for example, DropFunnels, like making a contribution or having an impact on people? Or is that, less important in the business side where you still want to give value, but you focus more on that in your personal life? I'm just curious how you think about giving back.
Yeah, that's, as I mentioned, it's one of my major, maybe blessings, but also curses, is caring a lot about people's experience and making sure they get a lot of value in that, and kind of that, in that regard. So the personal and professional balance has been a learning curve for sure. I think more so about how I balance family versus business. And it's been, there's a running multiple businesses at the same time means that you can get stretched pretty thin, but your bedrock is always going to be your family. So,
Right.
you know, and even right now, like we're gonna go out tonight, and it ends up being like we have to make priorities, and like my wife is so forgiving and willing to let me delay things and let me spend time on things necessary to afford for us, I think, a great life. And
Right.
so thankful for her patience and grace. If anyone else is thinking about getting married, here's the biggest thing is like, from a scale of 1 to 10, how forgiving is she? If she's anything less than a 10, then don't get married. If you're an entrepreneur, it just does not where your spouse needs to be very, very forgiving for you. And then also in return, you need to be very, very forgiving and graceful, through all those things as well. So it's been a balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's great advice for an entrepreneur. And I'm curious, as somebody who has obviously been entrepreneur for a while and probably encountered, hundreds of entrepreneurs, and will only continue to work with more and interact with more through DropFunnels and all the people you've been able to help with that. I'm curious what your advice or guidance would be to somebody who right now in the the thick of the coronavirus situation is thinking about possibly starting a business or starting some endeavor of their own to sort of free themselves from, being restricted to a job.
Yeah. So I kind of have 3 primary steps for that. The first thing is don't go into full on building mode. Don't build websites and funnels and all that kind of stuff. The first thing you need is validation. So validation means take something, seriously launch a Facebook Live, go tell people about some problem that you faced, your story of coming through it, how you solved it or how you're solving it, and how other people can tap into it as well. And then give them an irresistible offer for them to dive in to consume your product in exchange for buying something. So $97 for a course or something, even if it's super devalued, so to speak, and it's going to be worth more later, that's that incentive for people to pay you to build that thing. If nobody buys it, it means you probably didn't have the traffic, or
Right.
or people don't actually want it. And it doesn't make sense to go, I call that the backwards business launch. Go sell it before you build it. We're in the Kickstarter economy that people are willing to pay you up front to have some discount into getting access to it as it rolls out. Second, after you validate, is then you move into you can move into automation. So you can start to build some of those tools, those funnel aspects, and building whatever infrastructure you need to scale and that type of thing. And then final is where you're just moving into delegation. You're really hiring people out to fulfill some of those things, whether it's coaching. I think there's only 3 business models in the digital marketing space. It's courses, coaching, or consulting, right? That's it, the 3 C's. So pick one of those things and you can delegate most of those things. So validate, automate, and then delegate. And then that's how you can scale or even sell a company.
I love it. That's super valuable. Anybody who's even remotely thinking about doing their own thing, rewind, write those things down. That'll set you off on the right foot. Jordan, it's been awesome talking to you. I have one more question for you, but I'm saving it till the end, but I'd love to give you an opportunity to just tell people how to connect with you, or, if there's any call to action or anything you want to share with them, where to find you and how to do that.
Yeah. So my current focus is right within DropFunnels, as we've mentioned. It's the software marketing system of my dreams. It's the same system that I wish existed. And right now we're siphoning people from other systems because we're finally able to help them to get really the results that they want. And so we're young and we're breaking things, but we're growing very rapidly and taking a lot of market share. So for anyone who's wanting truly unlimited features, unlimited ability to grow your business and scale for half the price than you'd be paying anywhere else, it'd be worth giving it a little try. You can go to dropfunnels.com. We also have a great group if people want to search for DropFunnels. Just even if you're not going to dive into it and you're just trying to feel out the waters and be like, is this even right for me? Go post a question and that's the test I have anyone say, go post a question. How long does it take for you to get a response? Because that's going to be your experience going forward. You're going to find that, we work US hours, right? But I mean,
Right.
during our traditional hours, you're going to get an answer within 10 minutes. I mean, it's just incomparable in the industry that we really care about people and their results and the support and going above and beyond.
Yeah, that's huge. And as somebody who's spent a lot of money on ads and run ads to every platform you can probably think of in terms of building websites, I cannot be more excited about one that is finally built on WordPress for all of the features that does for me. I could sit here for hours and talk to you about the problems I've had with running traffic to all these other platforms, trying to get tracking set up so we can accurately figure out who's been to the website. I mean, I would bore you to tears with all the problems we've had. So instead of that, I'll just tell you, go check out DropFunnels. It's totally worth it. You won't regret it. And like you said, it's half of what you're going to pay at most of these other platforms, and you're going to get more features. I currently have a membership site hosted on one where I was paying a certain amount, and then at some point I crossed some tier that I didn't even know about, and they started billing me another 20% based on, I'm still not even 100% sure why, but it's just like, that's just kind of how these things are built. And anyway, it's just really refreshing to finally have an alternative to all that. So I'm looking forward to more out of DropFunnels. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up on an hour and a half. The last question I always ask is, what does legacy mean to you?
I think a legacy means, what are people going to remember me? What are they going to say about me when I'm outside of the room? Whether that means my death or when I leave the room, what are they going to say? Are they going to say he was nice, he was controlling, he was overbearing, he was generous, he was, what are those things? And I hope that people define what that means for them so that they have a singular word. And I would hope that generous would be the single word that people remember me for in all aspects: financial, time, investment, caring, going above and beyond. I hope that when I leave the room, people think that's one of the most generous people I've ever met. That would that'd make me exceptionally happy in terms of legacy.
That's awesome. Jordan, it's been great talking to you, man. I really appreciate you coming on and spending the time. So great to hear more about your story, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Rory, dude, I don't know how you came up with all this info about me. Like you reminded me of things that I forgot about. So kudos to you, and cheers to your new show, man. I'm super excited to continue working with you in the future.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jordan.